Yes, that's right. That's the durian. Welcome to the nation. I'm Jessie Chahal. Today we focus on the prickly business of durians, the king of fruits. Rising demand from China, referred to as the durian rush, has created an exciting business possibility, or rather possibilities, in durian cultivation. So much so, Malaysians, locals, are complaining over the exorbitant prices of certain specials such as the Musang King or the Blackthorn. Now, when we were all much younger, durians were seasonal, but that's not the case right now. Now, thanks to new technology, the king of fruits can be harvested almost all year round. To take us through the business of durians and the potential it holds for the country, we have in the studio Mr. Ser Tian Sin, Division Director for Export at the Federal Agricultural and Marketing Authority, better known as FAMA. Welcome to the show, Mr. Ser. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You've been in this business almost 4 decades, and since 1991 you've been involved in the export of local fruits. You say there has not been a fruit till now that can guarantee us revenue.
Yep, it is true. You know, we have been exporting fruits, but we are in small quantities. And Malaysia being a country which is not really agriculture focused, and we do not have that scale of production to actually be able to export in the large scale. So when durian came on board, it was good because durian can be planted in a small or a big scale or a medium scale. So you can have it around your house, you can have it at the back of the house, you can have it at the side of the house, but then the durian comes down from the tree, it can be processed and it can be exported. So you don't need large-scale production. But of course, when durian is seen to be a very good potential for exports, what actually happens is a lot of people get excited and they start investing, and now we are actually seeing a lot of people are coming up with large-scale production, not in the hundreds of acres, but in the thousands and 10,000s of acres.
Why the sudden or perhaps recent interest in durian? For the longest time, it had the no entry sign to so many different places, perhaps still does, but there has been a certain surge of interest, especially from the Asian market like China.
Well, it all started with because the Chinese loves durian. And they have been buying durians from Thailand, and they've been eating the Thai durians. Then, when they start moving out as tourists, and then when they come to Malaysia, then when they sample Malaysian durian, they realize that our durians are so much better in terms of taste and aroma compared to the Thai.
Right.
And therefore, a lot of things starts from tourism, actually. So when they like it, and then they want to have it in their country. So what a lot of our business people do is, realizing this, they start exploring ways to export. So one of the other places before we got the market access for our exports to China is to Hong Kong, because Hong Kong being very close to China, and Hong Kong also has a lot of mainland Chinese people that comes across and do business or for social visit, and they get durians from Hong Kong, Malaysian durians from Hong Kong, and that created the surge. So, and as the potential of the durian exploded, and a lot of people realized that there's a lot of money, and it's a potentially very, very big market for our exports.
I guess the word that you use, you know, exploded, is quite the right word, because it is now deemed the new wealth of the country, right? Do you think we've taken it for granted for a long time, or do you think we're late to access international market?
Well, we are not late, but you know, it's just that, you know, these things kicks in a little late, and then it was all because in 2011, in the year May 2011, we got our market access to export frozen durian pulp to China. And that is the beginning, because before we gained the market access, we are not able to export durian to China. So when we start exporting and more people come in contact with with our durian, and they get to taste it and they get to buy it, so it just caught on very fast. And then when the local people in China realized that there's potentially a lot of business that is that they can do in related to this durian, like in cooking, in pizza, in all kinds of stuff, as well as the pastry and cakes and everything. So the whole thing kicks up.
That's
you know,
right.
exploded just like that.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick look at what we have here on the table. This one is, of course, the frozen paste, and then we've got the pulp next to it. But what's interesting is the whole fruit, which is something that had only happened since May this year in terms of exporting to China.
Yes. We got the market access for our frozen whole fruit durian in May 2019. So that is about 6 months ago. And ever since we got the market access, our exporters has been exporting in big quantities by the container loads to China. And it has caught on with the Chinese even more because they love the frozen whole fruit durian.
Let's look at this pulp. This is frozen at a certain temperature, right?
Yes.
Do walk us through some of the features of that process.
Yeah, on the extreme distance, that is frozen durian paste, and it is frozen using a technology called cryogenic freezing. So what we're basically doing is they are freeze minus 30 degrees in 30 minutes using liquid nitrogen, and they are as hard as a rock. Then you have the frozen durian pulp, which goes through about the same process. The difference is the pulp you have sit with the flesh together,
right?
And they are also being put through the process of blast freezing, minus 30 degrees Celsius in 30 minutes. Whereas the frozen whole fruit with the shell, it requires more. So the blast freezing process will have to be minus 80 degrees Celsius to minus 110 degrees Celsius in 1 hour.
And you say in terms of preference, Chinese prefer to have the whole fruit that, obviously fresh first, and then second, the fruit.
Yes, you're right. You know, in fact, you know, if you go by the Chinese taste bud, we're their first preference is actually fresh, but unfortunately we haven't got the market access for fresh durians to be exported to China. So the second best is actually the frozen whole fruit, and this is what actually they really like, because when the frozen whole fruit, the frozen durian whole fruit thawed, they taste exactly almost like the fresh, except that it's chilled.
Except that it's chilled, nice and cool.
Yes,
right?
It's a bit like
Still
ice cream, like
creamy. That's right. We take a quick break. When we come back, we continue our discussion right here on durians. Don't go anywhere.
Pendermaan darah adalah amalan mulia yang boleh menyelamatkan nyawa seseorang. Namun tidak semua orang boleh menderma darah. Adakah anda layak untuk menderma darah? Anda layak menderma sekiranya sihat tubuh badan, berumur 17 hingga 60 tahun untuk penderma baru. Had kelayakan umur maksima bagi penderma darah tetap adalah 70 tahun. Berat badan 45 kg ke atas. Telah makan sebelum menderma. Tidur melebihi 5 jam. Tahap hemoglobin 12.5 gram per desiliter bagi wanita, manakala 13.5 gram per desiliter bagi lelaki. Pendermaan setiap 3 bulan bagi darah utuh dan pendermaan setiap 1 bulan untuk darah aferesis. Anda tidak boleh menderma darah jika anda satu darah boleh menyelamatkan 3 nyawa. Jadilah adiwira dengan menderma darah, mempromosi kepentingan darah dan menganjurkan kempen derma.
The prickly business of durians, that's what we're talking about today. Before the break, we spoke quite a bit, Mr. Ser, about how this fruit is particularly exported in its different forms as well. When did FAMA realize that there is potential here, and what are now the steps, especially for next year, to that are in place to ensure that you grow the market even further?
Well, what we realized is from our export figures, we realized that the durian exports are beginning to catch on, and it becomes more and more the figures increasing very rapidly. And of course, we are working very closely with all the exporters, and when the exporters sense there's money to make, everybody will come in. So what we are actually doing is, in the case of FAMA, to further strengthen our business, we are actually drawing up plans and participating in international exhibitions.
Here you have the king of fruits, Musang King.
Yeah.
All hail the king.
Yeah.
This is the one that now is really churning revenue. It is cited to be a major revenue earner for the economy. Now, let's look at returns. Apparently, it's 10 times more profitable than palm oil.
Well, 10 times is actually more than 10 times.
Okay.
Yeah, you can safely put it about 30 times more.
30 times.
You know, so durian, because it is a very expensive commodity, and it provides a lot of income to all the stakeholders that are involved. So if you going by the current situation where the durians are not in big production, a kilo of durian, a kilo of Musang King is going to set you back for about 90 ringgit.
You tell me
per
about
kilo,
it.
yes.
I know that.
Yeah.
What are the locals saying? What has been their reaction towards this sudden explosion?
Well, there has been a lot of complaints from the local people, simply because they think that, all our good durians are exported. But that is not, yes, true and partially true, not quite exact truth. The reason being, durians are not manufactured. So, it takes time to grow, and it takes about 5 to 7 years for the durian to actually start fruiting.
You say that in Malaysia, we of course hold true to some standards where we allow the fruit to fall off first, unlike other countries that truly harvest them for business purely.
Unlike Thailand. Thailand harvests the durian, and whereas in Malaysia we allow the fruit to fall, and when the fruit falls, it actually is 100% matured, and it gives a better aroma and taste. Whereas Thailand, when they harvest, they only harvest about 75% maturity.
What are some of the perhaps processes or procedures in place to ensure that we have and we do maintain a certain standard, because the market's so lucrative right now?
Well, what we must do is all our exporters and all the other people in the entire line, they need to do the right thing. Now, because it is such a big market, and China is a very important market, and what we need to do is we must continue to maintain the quality. And there are also some unscrupulous traders who try selling D101 as Musang King because they look alike. That is not good. Those are examples of things that are not good. So we should try to eliminate all this. But eventually what we should do is we should have some kind of regulatory control so that we are able to control our exporters from doing the wrong thing or the unscrupulous thing. And at the same time, we need to do more research to come up with better quality. But of course, the usage of the right fertilizer will also increase the yield. So all this is going to bring us to a situation that we're going to be able to offer a lot more durians to mainland China and to earn durian money.
Talking about earning durian money, Malaysians also want to get on this boat. There have been many new innovative investment schemes that are now in the market. Do you think this is some kind of trend?
Well, it is a trend because businessmen are very creative. So they find that this is a newfound wealth resources, and there is a lot of potential to unlock all this revenue that they can earn. So what actually happens is they get into this hoping that there will be people who are interested because the amount of revenue you're expected to get, the returns are fairly good. So what happens is a lot of people get into this scheme, and they start planting in a big way, and they start producing more, and whatever that they produce, it can be all absorbed by China. I mean, China is a huge market, right? They export about 550 over millions USD, US dollars a year, and we're only exporting 4% of it.
So that leads me to my next question. Are Malaysian farmers and plantations, are we ready to handle this kind of large volumes?
Yes, we have a lot of people are growing in a big acreage, namely in Sabah, Sarawak, and even in Pahang. So in the near future, in the next 3 or 4 years, you're going to find a lot more durians being produced. And but then again, whatever that we are producing, we are still not able to meet the full demand of from mainland China. So what we actually should be doing now is we should focus on niche market for premium price, where it will give us more money, because we are not in the mass business yet. Once we produce mass, and perhaps at that time we will probably enjoy a better price, and at that time I think even local market, you know, the local people will also be able to buy it at a lower price.
Right, seeing that there is, you know, a huge potential for this, what do you think are some of the challenges that can be posted? You know, whether it's things like climate, weather, or as you said very easily just now, you know, planters or farmers not having that kind of perhaps resource.
Okay, the biggest challenges actually to the production of durian is actually the weather. Our weather, because when we have too much rain, it's no good for durian. When it's too little rain, it's also no good for durian. So durian needs rain and also needs a lot of sunlight. Okay, so if we have a good balance of it, then we will be able to come up with a good quality durian. But at the same time, the usage of chemicals like pesticide to control pests from destroying the fruit, that will also ensure that our durian will have a better quality.
Where would you say is the best location for us to harvest, grow durians in the country?
At the moment, you know, Durian King, for Musang King in particular, it can be grown anywhere. But it is said that the popular one comes from Pahang. But I think it's not quite true. In fact, you know, going by my own personal experience, I think I had the best Musang King in Sabah.
Right.
So, you know, but I think the underlying reasons is, you know, they have to be well managed. They have to be well fertilized. They have to be well cared with, and I think by doing that, the durian, when it falls, it will be of good quality. But of course, not forgetting that we need to do more R&D, research and development.
We'll come back to discuss more efforts that's needed in R&D to ensure that durian will remain our new wealth driver. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Sepuluh berita paling penting yang anda perlu tahu.
Ketika bersama pasukan bawah 18 tahun negara.
Ringkasan berita dalam 15 minit. Laporan wartawan bernama dari seluruh negara dan koresponden bernama di Singapura, Bangkok dan Jakarta.
Dan mampu meletakkan Malaysia sebagai harimau Asia yang baru.
Kini anda ada pilihan, padat dan kredibel. Bernama 7.45, tepat jam 7.45 malam di Bernama TV.
Mengupas isu semasa, merangkumi politik, ekonomi, sukan serta hiburan. Membawakan anda agenda pentas dunia.
Welcome back to The Nation. I'm Jessie Chahal in conversation with Mr. Ser Tian Sin, Division Director for Export at the Federal Agricultural and Marketing Authority, better known as FAMA to all of us. Before the break, we spoke about how people are investing, Malaysians are investing in the many schemes that are out there, and what FAMA is also doing to rev up efforts in terms of ensuring that, you know, this revenue is grown.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned just before the break about R&D efforts that need to be stepped up on.
Yes, well, you know, Musang King has been exported to China since 2011, and it has been 8 years since. So what we need to do is we need to come up with more research varieties, and to also tailor to what the Chinese market wants, their trend and their taste buds. Very importantly, because the Ministry of Agriculture realized that it's such a big market. So whenever we talk about China, but that doesn't mean that other markets are not relevant.
True.
But we should also look at, we should also tap into other markets, but they're not as big as in China.
Which are the other markets that FAMA has its eye on?
Traditionally, our biggest market is actually Singapore because they are just across the causeway. And then now Hong Kong is coming very important because Hong Kong are importing for their own consumption among the people in Hong Kong. But there are also a lot of mainland Chinese that comes across to Hong Kong to buy durian and eat durian. So next will be coming very closely is Australia. And we're also targeting countries like America, Canada, not the American, but more of the Asians in the
those
American
countries.
cities. All right, and we are also looking at the former Soviet Union. We should actually tap into the former Soviet Union because they are able to accept durian, not like a lot of Europeans who can't accept durian. So these are the market that we should tap into, and eventually it will be a huge market for us, for everybody, and the pie will be very, very big.
And deep. Whose work is it really to ensure that either we go to the market or we bring the market to us, and how is FAMA involved in this?
All this can be done in both ways. When we bring it to the market, we are exporting to the market, but we can also target the tourists, the mainland Chinese tourists that comes into Malaysia, and what we need to do is to organize durian tours for them, or durian eating visits.
Which will be big next year because it is Visit Malaysia Year 2020. Agro-tourism.
Yes.
That's the main focus here.
Yes. In conjunction with Visit Malaysia Year 2020, the Ministry of Agriculture is actually pushing for durian tourism. So what we want to encourage is all these tourists to come to Malaysia, go visit our homestay, our durian orchards, and get them interested, get them hooked. We're in for bigger things.
That's right, definitely. All that happening next year. What about efforts to develop further downstream as well? We talked about supply and demand, of course, and might be some challenges there as well. But what about efforts downstream?
Well, as far as the downstream product, it is actually a huge market for downstream products. In fact, for all the downstream product, it actually gives you a better margin compared to the frozen durian that we are exporting.
Right.
So we should really tap into it because it gives a lot of value added to our durians. And we can actually present the durian in a wider usage. When there's a wider usage by the consumers with our durian, it will spur demand. And when the demand increases, we will be able to meet the market demand by having more durian plantations.
That's right.
Planting our durian.
As we've seen also in terms of, what this can be turned into, there's now durian coffee, there's durian chocolate, there's a durian jam, if you will, all sorts of things coming out of this as well. What's next for the future of durian?
Well, the next would be, as I mentioned earlier, that fresh is one of the durians that the Chinese really like. So the ministry will eventually embark on applying market access to China for the exportation of fresh durians into China. When that comes about, and we're going to see that the whole potential of our exports of durians being unleashed.
Would we have some kind of exclusivity on that, being one of the biggest suppliers?
Well, the only thing is our exclusivity is mainland Chinese consumer happens to like our durians, namely, especially the Mosang King. And Mosang King is such a big durian brand in China now, and they're willing to pay a lot of money just to eat it. And we have in China 300 to 400 million people who loves durian, who can afford to buy durian.
It's a huge number.
And we are only talking about the first tier city that we are entering. We haven't gone into the second tier city in China.
Right. In an unfortunate event of a disease, perhaps, what do we do then? Obviously, supply will be interrupted.
Yep. All these things, we have Department of Agriculture, and the constant monitoring is very important. You do not wait for the disease to happen. But in the case of durian, the disease doesn't affect the fruit so much. It actually affects the tree. When the disease strikes the tree, then you got no more durian. So more importantly, what we need to do is to ensure that we export good quality durian, safe for consumption, and the quality remains high. And if everybody in the entire chain work towards that and keep that in mind and continue doing that, I think we are going to see a lot more things happening.
A lot more things happening. Any projections you can share for next year?
Well, next year we're hoping that we are able to at least generate 500 million in terms of revenue contribution to the country for the exports of durian, and I think that is not difficult to achieve. Right? As long as the weather is good, we got a bumper harvest, and the demand is there, and I think we are able to achieve that.
Is this also inclusive of online sales?
Yes, online sales is getting very popular, so that also brings durian to a bigger market in whichever market that we export to.
What would be your wise words to perhaps entrepreneurs or businesses wanting to get into the world of durian?
Well, the most important thing is, this durian is such a big potential, and especially our Mosangking, and it has such a big market for us, especially in China. So the entire stakeholders, from the growers to the collectors to the exporters and to the importers, we must all do the right thing by giving good quality durian, by not cheating, by giving people good value for whatever that they paid for. And I think if we can do that, we're going to see a lot more durian being exported to many parts of the world.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Ser.
Thank you.
It was definitely an enlightening conversation we've just had. The prickly business of durians, that has been our topic for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.